When you scroll through endless listings of sleek towers and promise-filled specs, it's easy to feel a little nervous, especially after a few purchases that looked great on the page but left you swapping cables or tweaking settings just to get a game to run at anything close to the advertised frame rates. I've spent the last week setting up the HP OMEN 16L in a cramped bedroom, swapping out a few peripherals, and firing up everything from Elden Ring to my video editing workflow just to see where it truly shines and where it might fall short. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. First off, the most noticeable thing about this machine is its footprint. The 16L isn't a typo, it really is a 16-inch deep case, which is a relief if you're living in a dorm or a home office where space is at a premium. That compactness means you can tuck it under a desk or slide it into a small entertainment center without it becoming a visual monolith. The trade-off, however, is that the airflow design is a bit more constrained than you'd find in a traditional full tower. In my testing, the fans kept the CPU and GPU temps in a safe range during moderate sessions, but when I pushed the RTX 5060 hard in a marathon Cyberpunk 2077 run, the temps hovered near the higher end of the GPU's thermal envelope and the fans kicked up noticeably. If you're planning to game at max settings for several hours straight, you might want to keep an eye on the ambient temperature or consider adding a small aftermarket exhaust. The heart of the machine is the AMD Ryzen 7 8700F. It's a solid 8-core, 16-thread chip that handles modern titles with ease, but the real surprise for me was how well it performed in non-gaming workloads. I opened a large 50 GB Photoshop project and ran a quick render in DaVinci Resolve while the game Valorant was idle in the background. The system didn't stutter, and the render time was comparable to a higher-priced workstation I've owned before. That versatility comes from the 32 GB of DDR4 RAM, which is already enough for most gamers and creators today. The only downside is that the RAM runs at a modest speed compared to the high-frequency kits you can find for custom builds, so you won't extract every ounce of performance you might see on a boutique rig, but the real-world impact is minimal for the majority of games and creative apps. Storage is another area where the OMEN 16L feels generous. The 1TB PCIe Gen 4 NVMe SSD boots Windows 11 Pro in under 10 seconds, and loading times in Starfield were consistently under 2 seconds for most areas. Because it's a Gen 4 drive, you get those burst speeds that can shave a few seconds off large-level loads, which is a tangible benefit if you hate waiting at loading screens. The downside is simply that you only have one drive bay. If you end up filling the SSD with a growing library of games, you'll have to rely on external storage or upgrade the internal drive later, which can be a bit of a hassle in a tight case. One feature that sets this model apart is the inclusion of Microsoft Copilot built into Windows 11 Pro. I'm not a heavy AI assistant user, but having Copilot ready to pull up game guides, system diagnostics, or even draft a quick email while I'm in the middle of a raid is a small convenience that adds up over time. It's not a game-changing feature, but it does feel like a nice nod to the all-in-one vibe HP is pushing with the OMEN line. Now, who should actually consider buying this desktop? If you're a gamer who lives in a small apartment, a college student who wants a machine that can handle both Fortnite and a semester of design projects, or anyone who wants a ready-to-play Windows 11 environment without the hassle of building a PC, the OMEN 16L checks a lot of boxes. The price point lands it in the mid-range segment, cheaper than many custom rigs with similar core specs, yet more expensive than a bare-bones system you could assemble yourself. For those who value the convenience of a pre-built, warranty-backed system, the value is in that turnkey experience and the aesthetic of the Panda metal finish, which looks sleek without being garish. Conversely, the machine isn't the best fit for a few specific audiences. If you're a hardcore overclocker who wants to push every component beyond stock limits, you'll quickly run into the case's airflow constraints and the fact that the CPU isn't unlocked for easy overclocking. Similarly, if you're aiming for 4K ultra-high refresh gaming with ray tracing turned all the way up, the RTX 5060, while a solid entry-level GPU, will struggle to maintain high frame rates in the most demanding titles. In those scenarios, you'd be better off looking at a larger tower with a higher-tier GPU, or saving up for a system that explicitly markets itself as a high-performance workstation. One practical nuance I discovered during setup was the cable management inside the chassis. HP has done a decent job routing the